All right, thank you for staying with the Monday Report. The discussion is starting right now. I'm joined by Mule Musau, the National Coordinator, ELOG. Thank you for making time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, it's 33 days marathon where they're going to vet first the 11 contestants for the IEBC chairperson position and then 105 contestants for the commissioner's position. What do you make of the vetting that started today first?
I think the first thing that I think the first thing is to answer the question that you're not asking. How come we are starting to do this vetting 2.5 years before an election? But I think it's a discussion we can be able to have later in the conversation, because there's a reason why we are discussing this now, not 1.5 years ago when we could have done all these activities that we are doing now. But as far as the vetting is concerned, first, I'm happy that the panel, once they got going, went to Naivasha, sat down, gave us a timeline for how they'll be able to conduct this process. They've been able to keep the timelines. They were able to shortlist, to have a long list of candidates, Kenyans who felt that they could be able to hold the position of the IEBC Commission, despite all the pressure that comes with it, and that they've been able to have a short list of 11 Kenyans for the position of the chair and 105 others for the position of the commission. So far from what we've seen today, so far so good. But they're asking questions. Kenyans submitted memoranda to the panel as part of their engagement in the process. My hope is that even as we listen into the questions and the vetting that is going on, that the panel is also considering the issues which were raised by Kenyans through the memoranda. Of course, we are not privy to that memoranda, but I hope that they are also able to cross-check, so that at the end of the day, the commission that we do get is a commission that must pass muster, especially in such times as the ones that we are going through in this country. Okay.
You've observed quite a number of elections, and are we prepared enough for the 2027 election? Because you've raised a concern here that we're doing this 2.5 years to the poll. Is that too short? And will that determine how prepared the IEBC would be? Or can we simply turn around this wheel?
I don't think in terms of electoral practice, there's any time that would be enough time. But we do have timelines which have been stipulated within our laws. We have a constitution which ensures that we have a 5-year electoral cycle. There are jurisdictions which have 7 years, there are others which have 4 years, like the US. So within our cycle, the expectations is that we have a commission which is in place, because there's too many things, and I'm very sure we're going to be speaking about some of the lapsed issues or lapsed activities that could have been undertaken. So we already time-barred. We could have done boundaries. We could have had by-elections for areas which do not have representation. So we already time-barred as far as preparations are concerned. So having about half of a term now remaining, and a commission which comes into place, which is going to be near, we are still falling to the same trap that we've had in the other elections, where we have appointed commissioners too late in the day. The only hope this time is that, because this one is a little bit longer, we have seen the Chebukati Commission come into office about less than a year to the election. The last commissioners who came for the 2022 elections, the missing ones, the 4, came again less than a year to the elections. So this is the first time that we're getting at least an opportunity to be able to have the commission at least 2 years before that election. But that does not mean that we're going to be able to attend to all the issues. Remember, so many things have not been attended to, including what I've just spoken about in terms of boundary review and so many others. And then now we're going to go. We have a condition that we have always called a permanent campaign mode in this country, where we don't get off our horses in terms of campaigning once an election is over. Imagine now what is going to happen in the next 2 years. So will there be an opportunity for sobriety, where, for instance, electoral reforms can be finalized in good time for implementation, where we can be able to prepare the technology which is required for that coming elections, prepare the commissioners themselves who are new, induct them into electoral practicing so that they can be able to undertake their responsibilities effectively. I think we don't have enough time.
Yeah.
And whoever is going to be getting this job must hit that ground running and running very fast.
Yeah, and that was my next question, because by our standards, this is the one commission we're going to have in place slightly a bit more earlier than the elections. Even though we have 14 by-elections coming up, boundary delimitation, they can still prepare well enough for this, right? Or is this...
I'm not saying that they can be able to prepare well. I'm just raising concerns because we have a packed calendar of activities which must be done between now and 2027. Remember, when we talk about a 5-year electoral cycle, there are things which are imagined that must be done, not just imagined, actually, which are proposed to be conducted within those 5 years. There is voter education, there is voter registration. These are continuous processes. They have already stalled as we speak because of funding constraints, because of lack of leadership within the commission. Those are things, you can't recover that time that has been lost in terms of enfranchising voters, for instance, in this country. But while speed can, you can be able to catch up with most of the activities that we have, it will leave very little room for maneuver. And that's where my fear comes. Remember, such processes as procurement processes, especially when it comes to logistics which are required for purposes of the conduct of the elections. A lot of mischief, we suspect a lot of mischief goes into these things, and you do not want to leave any room for speculation, any room for anything, any fraudulent activity to occur. So if they had more time, then there would be a much more thorough, clearer, transparent, much more predictable process. There will be instances where something is rushed. Just to pick on one issue, there's been a conversation around the voter register, for instance. If there was an ongoing process of voter registration, assessing and reviewing that voter register within a timeline that has been provided, within opportunities which have been provided by the Constitution, then it will be easier for you to be able to plot out or raise out any of the issues, anomalies that you may be able to see. But if you're going to get into a point where people start questioning the veracity of that voter register, then the Commission may be forced into some action, such as doing away with that register and then starting a process all over again. That already condenses the activities that they have to undertake around that particular time. And remember, there are still other things that they're supposed to be doing simultaneously. So my worry now is that, and everybody wants to see that a thorough job is going to be conducted this time round. So my worry is that there'll be too many activities. They'll be within a very short and contracted period of time. 2027 will be here sooner than you know it. Yeah. And the question at that point will be, did we do enough? So I think they need to hit the ground running. They have a better timeline, especially in terms of time before the next elections than the other commissions which have come recently. But they are still, there's a lot of time which has been lost. Yeah,
IEBC raised concern about the voter register and having dead people still in the voter register. How soon can this be turned around? And wouldn't it be better to do this at the tail end, once all the registration has already been done, plus the new voters on board, so that then it is sifted through once and for all?
So two things first. So one is that we raised, the concerns that we've raised recently about the voter register is based on audits we've carried out ourselves. 2 times over the last now around 10 to 15 years. In 2012, we conducted an audit through one of our member organizations, IED, and we found anomalies in the register. In 2017, we conducted another one. We still found anomalies in that register. And what we've been saying is, it is important to note that those 2 audits were conducted after elections had been conducted. And when you do that, and you find that the voter register is still not cleaned enough it cannot be basically approved for an election, and you've conducted an election with it, then that raises concerns. And so you start questioning, so does IEBC really clean that register? And if you were able to see that in 2017, never got an opportunity to be able to do it in 2022, and if the question about the voter register, the dead voters, it's not even us who raised it. We were concerned about the cleaning of it because we never accessed any lists anywhere to suggest that the register has been updated as far as that is concerned, which is the second point. But it was raised by KPMG themselves in their audit. This is a firm which was contracted by IEBC, and they raised concern that there are over 1.3 million voters. There could be, those are the words which are used in the report, could be 1.3 million dead voters. That is 2017. We have not seen an exercise, or there's not been any evidence to show that that cleaning exercise happened. But we have gone on to say we expect biometric technology to detect dead voters, for instance. It gives you some level of confidence if you use the biometric system and technology, especially in terms of registration and identification of voters. But you forget that we have had malfunctioning of these kits. You forget that that malfunctioning has led to many instances in which manual processes were adopted at polling stations. And you also forget that there's been a razor-thin margin between victors and the losers of elections in our country. So when you look at all those factors, then it raises serious concerns about that particular role of voters in the country, and therefore we feel it is important that that is assessed and evaluated before we move further into the electoral process.
But there's also an issue here in terms of budgets, because during the 2017 general election, IEBC was allocated 49.9 billion shillings, which made it almost the most expensive at 3,200 per voter. Now they were requesting for 61.7 billion. 19 billion shillings more than was spent in the previous election. Is that our silver bullet? Or is that our undoing? Because should they not get that money at 61.7 billion, is that a direct ticket to an election that can be contested? And is the reverse true? That if they get the money, then we're good?
Let me answer your question this way. One of our serious concerns about elections is the high cost that we incur to conduct an election. You know, we need to position this matter very clearly. An election is the process through which people choose their government or make decisions about the government that they want to have in office. These are poor people. Imagine they are paying for themselves. Imagine that a poor person in the fringes of the country has to pay for themselves to be able to conduct an election, to choose a leader who goes to represent them in the decision-making spaces. How do you get 2,500? How do you get, how many people can be able to get 2,500 to go to pay for that process, or 3,200 as you've alluded, to go and pay for that process? That's how you need to imagine this. It's supposed to be a people process, and this is the people in the country. Do we have those resources that we can be able to spare so that we can be able to conduct a process at least, such as this? And comparatively, are there no examples out there of other elections which are being conducted at a lesser cost? And they are there, very close to us. Rwanda has one of the cheapest elections within our region, at less than $5 per voter. So Tanzania is less than $10. So is Uganda. And some of them are very protracted electoral processes. But ours is more than $20.
$4, yes.
Yeah, that already tells you there's a very big problem in that. But the issue that I also want to tackle, arguments have been advanced about why, for instance, we do have very expensive elections. And among the issues, two issues keep coming up. One is the issue of trust, that because we don't trust our electoral processes, or Kenyans don't trust our electoral processes, then the commission and other actors around it have to go out of their way to try to convince you that it's an authentic election by ensuring that there are features around it that should give you confidence. One of them is what? Technology.
Yeah. That
you employ technology to make it much more efficient, to make it much more transparent. And the other one is security in terms of some of the features, like, and you've had it said that we have a ballot paper which has 7 security features.
Yeah.
Just printing, it has more security features, by the way, than our banknotes. that makes it much more expensive, an expensive paper that we have to use only once every 5 years to conduct our elections. And those have been advanced on the basis that since Kenyans have no confidence in our elections, then we need to do something about it. We need to pull something in the works.
Is it a valid argument?
I don't think so. Because why do Kenyans not have the confidence? That is what we need to be dealing with. What is the issue which raises these concerns about Kenyans not feeling very confident? We did a very good, apart from the technical report that we did for the 2022 elections, we went out of our way to do another report, which was a qualitative survey of Kenyans to ask them across the country, what is it about our elections which makes you worried about whether it's a credible election or not? And some of the answers which kept coming were very interesting. There were people who were saying, well, we see IEBC coming to our villages, they pick individuals, some from the same family. You know, so those are those discussions that we even have in these tables, that there are places where members of one clan are picked to become the presiding officers. IEBC does not have a system where you can be able to go to every village to be able to ascertain or vet the individuals who come, who's related to who.
Yeah.
But the members of public know that. So they are working in these villages, they are participating in these villages. They can be able to see. There's a skewed process of getting these people who are working in this commission. And remember, what does the Maina Kiai ruling speak of? That polling, we have a finality of votes is at the polling station.
Yeah.
So the people who actually determine an election are those people, 6, 7, 8, 9 people in a polling station. So if people are going to raise concerns about those individuals who there, I'm very sure many of them are very innocent. I know many of them. But if there are going to be questions raised at that level, then how far will the people take that kind of suspicion? If they are looking at it from the lowest level, then do they think even Bomas makes sense to them? Do they think that the stories which happen in Bomas are real or imagined?
Yeah.
You know, so we have created an animal of an election, a mongrel of an election that makes it very difficult, very complex. Yet, if you look at Article 86 of the Constitution, which talks about the principles of our elections, it starts by saying that whatever system that we use for our elections and the process that we employ must be simple. Simple is the first qualification of our elections. Are they simple? If we make them simple, followed by accurate, followed by secure, followed by transparent, followed by accountable elections, then we will answer to the question of the suspicion about our elections. And as a result, we may not even need to have very many complex introductions in the process. And I'll give you a final example. Gambia, and I've used this a number of times, Gambia uses a marble to cast a vote. They don't use a paper ballot. And they even had a near referendum to make a decision about whether they want to walk away from using a marble or not. And they decided, no, we know the marble. In the villages, we know the marble. We are able to make a decision between person A and person B using a marble. It just speaks to we don't want to go to the marble way. I don't think Kenyans would want to go the marble way. I'm just saying, could we come up with a simple way of conducting our electoral processes that would inform transparency, it would inform access to the process, access to the entire system, and perhaps Kenyans, if they believe now in that particular process, and we were able to see what Gen Z, for instance, the Gen Z were able to do during the demonstrations. They were able to unpack very many things. People who thought that a Katiba is a very complicated document, it was unpacked within hours. So there is opportunity to be able to make our elections very simple, very accessible, and I think that would attend to the question of costs. Because that's been the argument. The argument has been, we don't trust our elections, employ technology, complicated technology at that, employ security features, employ personnel, but let's also not forget that there are also other cost drivers, such as the polling station logistics alone. And there was a very good argument which was given by one of the directors of IEBC recently, where he said, the entire logistics for IEBC, for instance, in terms of hiring cars to transport strategic material, is left to them to privately hire when they think they could even use government vehicles. So when you hire 46,229 cars, because those are the number of polling stations around the country, if you translate that into money, and remember these are private engagement, how much money is that? How much money do you need?
Logistics alone.
So logistics alone carries a serious budget. But there are aspects of it that we could be able to deal with and reduce the cost.
Let me bring up some feedback real quick as we wind up on this conversation. Looking forward, what should be the entry of the commissioners when they come in, the chairperson when they come in, where are the areas of focus? Well, let's bring up your concerns or your questions or your comments. Sir Nixon says we need an IEBC chairperson who will build a culture around truthfulness, resilience, professionalism and morally upright systems to live for years. An IEBC that will bring satisfaction to almost everyone. May the best candidate win. Okay? Is that actually possible? We'll talk about that shortly. Nyantika Chester says, in my opinion, IEBC Kenya requires men and women who are corruption-free, bribe-proof, and won't be susceptible to political pressure and machinations. The Gambians have been using marbles in their polls. All right? Brian Chemwa says the previous IEBC failed to reinforce its independence from political influence and rebuild public confidence in its operations. Tongaren questions, and is the new IEBC coming from heaven? Okay, let's see what else you're saying here. If there's one more, let's bring it up and see what you're saying. Orutwa says, how do you expect Kenyans to have trust with the elections when IEBC, a body empowered to maintain transparency, is the genesis of a corruption in the elections, giving results the opposite of what voters have decided? Total rigging of elections. And this is what, how can IEBC restore public trust? Because this seems like almost a largely perception issue. So even if you bring down the budgets, then people will say this system is a sham. You increase the budgets because you're trying to bring in Kimskit, which people say are now obsolete. Again, it's still too much money. How can they restore public trust?
The number one way of restoring public trust is fidelity to the law, period. You know, elections are anchored on a framework of laws. A good example, we know within our laws that once a commission or the commissioners retire, others come in, and there is a timeline for that. When we can't meet those timelines for one reason or the other, and especially when you start seeing politics within it, then already you're muddled. Yes, immediately, because it should be a seamless process. What happens to which company operates without its board of directors? Once these ones retire, the others very efficiently are brought in. Now, you want to conduct elections there, as we assume there's an electoral cycle out there, and the activities which must be continuous. We have staffers or permanent staff who are employed to continue doing work around the clock. They are being paid by taxpayers' money, and you don't want to choose the board. You don't want to choose a commission which is supposed to be leading them. So already, when you violate the Constitution, and that is just one instance, we can go to all those other things. We can talk about even laws which have not been enacted by, because not just IEBC alone. When we talk about the election management bodies, we mean IEBC, we mean Parliament, because Parliament is a manager of elections. We mean the police, because they manage the security of elections. We mean the judiciary, because they arbitrate over issues to do with the elections. So all these actors, the registrar of political parties, they are managing elections. So within their realms, if they are able to deal and address and follow the law, in terms of what they are supposed to undertake, then we'll have dealt with the first problem. Then we can now come to the practicals of it. One of the things that we've been insisting on, and I remember even when I had an opportunity with the last commission, I made that pronouncement in their office. Elections belong to the people. Why do we choose an independent model of a commission? If you look at the Western countries, and we've had an argument last night, we had a long express conversation about this. The Western model of EMBs is usually governmental. People do elections within government ministries. But the major reason for that is that those institutions work. The government, even a ministry, if it is given the work to underwrite an election process, they deliver. In our case, we can't trust the government to do that for us. Siri Kali. You don't want them to come in and handle the election. So we say we imagine as somebody said again yesterday, we imagine that there could be some individuals who are clean, the ones we are trying now to choose, and you can see from the comments, holier than thou individuals will come within our midst and will be able to underwrite these elections on our behalf. But the most important point for me is not whether they are good or not, it is on our behalf. So that commission comes into office at the behest of Kenyans. So why would they then start conducting themselves in an elitist way? From an ivory tower? Those processes must be, canvassed very closely with the public because they are working in trust for them. So the input of how we want, and I said before that I wish I was seeing our commissioners having time to be able to meet the other so-called informal sectors of our society. We have elders, we have women, Mama Mboga women who have associations. I wish they were listening into those conversations and therefore establishing mechanisms and framework of engagement on the basis of the feedback that they get from the members of the public, of the people themselves. On whose behalf they hold election. But if they do it the other way around, where they come up, they go sit somewhere in some ivory tower, come up with ideas of how they want to run their elections, and then come and proffer the same to the people, that supply-driven angle of conducting elections is one of the things which is not going to make our elections look any better. It must be demand-driven. All right. Thank you so much for making time for us today, this evening. Mule Musau, National Coordinator, ELOG. We'll see how the election, the IEBC selection panel process goes. It's a 33-day marathon process. We'll keep you up to speed as it unfolds. That's where we leave it for now. On behalf of everyone who made this possible, say good night and God bless.